All right. Man, there's some boxing organizations in trouble, And that is Top Rank and Dazn. The way things are panning out, according to what Bob Arum said in an interview yesterday on ESPN while they were airing the Top Rank fights, replays of Top Rank fights. According to what Bob Arum says, those guys are in a lot of trouble vis-a-vis the PBC. Same thing goes for Dazn. Let's talk about why that is and why that's significant for boxing in this video. All right. Let's talk this boxing. Thank you guys so much for coming back again during this quarantine time. Thank you to everybody in the LDBC. Thank you to everybody that supports the channel that don't consider themselves to be a member of our little boxing community. Thank you all the same. We really appreciate your contribution to the channel. What we're going to talk about now is the state of boxing and what Bob Arum said in an interview yesterday on ESPN. Now, what he said was this. He was asked by Joe, I think it was Joe Tessitore, very good interview by Joe Tessitore. And he asked Bob Arum questions, and because these guys obviously prepare for the interview, they know what questions to ask, and they have the questions that they're going to answer. So these are things that you heard in other interviews with Bob Arum throughout the week, but it was really put out there when he said it on ESPN when we're on ESPN. And what he said was that he had a plan to bring back boxing, and they want to bring back boxing sooner than other sports would, in front of in venues that do not have fans. And he talked about all of the safety mechanisms that they would put in place to ensure that the fighters were safe, the judges were safe. He said that, there's going to be testing for the judges, testing for the participants, testing for the referee, testing for anybody that's in there to ensure that there's nothing being passed around and that everybody is safe. But in that conversation, he also said, he was asked, what will the quality of the fights be? When he answered that question, that's where I'm saying that he exposed something in Top Rank that is an issue for them, but is not necessarily an issue for the PBC, and is a huge issue from Dazn. That if this thing gets stretched out, could fundamentally affect those guys' ability to put on competitive fights. And that is this, that the fights that would be taking place would need to be with fighters that are currently located within the United States of America, because there are travel restrictions coming into and going out of the United States, coming into and going out of the UK, and through every other country in Europe, because this pandemic is global. So you're going to have difficulties having any fights where it is an American fighter or somebody, it doesn't necessarily have to be American, but a fighter that is currently located in the United States against a fighter that is not currently located in the United States, or having a fight taking place in UK with a guy that's from the UK and not from somebody, and against a guy that is not in the UK. Because once even as we slowly allow, people to come out and do different things and lighten the restrictions in certain states, it is going to be a while before that spreads across, the entire United States. And it is definitely going to be a problem with any type of international travel. So you're not guaranteed to, number one, you're not guaranteed to be able to get into the United States. And if you are able to get into the United States, it might very well take you a very long time before you're able to actually communicate or go near anybody. You could be in quarantine for a solid month And if you're in quarantine for a solid month, that means you would have to come into the United States and you don't have an ability to work with your trainer because they're isolated. You don't have the ability to work to spar because the sparring partners that you would have will be isolated because you're not allowed to have contact with anybody. That is a huge problem for Top Rank, because Top Rank for years was seriously pushing towards their fighters being international Eastern Europeans or South American fighters. Predominantly Eastern European is the way that they've been pushing it lately. So you just look at the rosters of the fights that Top Rank can put together. They involve Taylor Ramirez, right? Taylor versus Ramirez, Josh Taylor versus Ramirez. Can't happen. One is American, the other one is from the UK. Fury versus Wilder. Can't happen. One is from the UK, one is from the United States. Anthony Joshua versus Pulev. Difficult to happen. One is from Eastern Europe and the other one is from the UK. One is not in the UK, the other one is in the UK. And you can see that from top to bottom in Top Rank. And matter of fact, one of the fights, for example, that this has already occurred in is the fight between Monster Inoue and, God, man, what's his name? It's another champion down at that same, an American that's in that same weight division. They're going to actually have to change that fight from Monster Inoue fighting it to Greer out of the city of Chicago taking that fight because they can make the fight. So that affects Top Rank from making any competitive fights because they really don't have any American fighters that they've been promoting, and they haven't had any American fighters, significant number of American fighters that they'll be able to put in there against each other. They got one here and there, like a Shakur Stevenson and Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez, Jose Ramirez, but the best of their competitions are not in the United States. So it's tougher, and they're not in the same weight class. So then you look and say the same thing applies for DAZN. DAZN has a bunch of people: Canelo Alvarez, Mexico; Gennady Golovkin, I think he's from Kazakhstan. Gennady Golovkin, Kazakhstan. You have Demetrius Andrade, United States; Canelo Alvarez, Mexico. It's just very, or Canelo Alvarez is actually Golden Boy, but you get my point. And it's most of those guys were international type of situations. So that's going to be tough. The PBC, on the other hand, is an organization that really can put those type of fights on and put on world really top level cards because they have an abundance of fighters that are from the United States. If you look at 147 pounds, you can make fights between Terrence Crawford and Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, both in the United States. Or if you want to just stick specifically within the PBC, you have Errol Spence Jr., Sean Porter, Errol Spence Jr., Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman, I don't know, I think Ugas is here. I think he's Cuban, but he's nationalized. So you have Yordanis Ugas, who's still located in the United States. In the heavyweight division, you've got Luis Ortiz, who's still in the United States. You just have a lot of the fighters. Ife Agagbe is in the United States, from what I understand, in heavyweight. So you can make fights with Ife Agagbe, Luis Ortiz. You can make fights with David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant. And now with the rumors that Jamal Charlo might be moving up to 168, you can have Jamal Charlo versus Demetrius Andrade, or Jamal Charlo versus Caleb Plant, Jamal Charlo versus David Benavidez. Because they focus so much on have so many top-notch American fighters, they're actually able to put on the type of fights that people may want to see. Then even if they say, hey, in order to see this fight, you might have to pay a little extra money, not a severe, monstrous pay-per-view, price, but hey, man, we got to pay, $30 for a series of these fights so that we can not only have the licensing fee, we can, cover that little extra bit of money. But, that's kind of a different subject. Regardless, my point is that they can make that scenario work. But Top Rank, when Bob Arum said that they were going to make competitive fights, he skirted around the question and said that, there would be fights against people that you would have seen on Top Rank before. that doesn't mean just because you've seen him on Top Rank before doesn't mean that those are high quality fights. You know what I mean? Those are, and matter of fact, I would say that the fact that you have seen him on ESPN before, with the exception of Terrence Crawford, Vasily Lomachenko, and Jose Ramirez, and Teofimo Lopez, that they are not particularly exciting fights. However, though, maybe he can work to get Teofimo Lopez to have a fight with Devin Haney. That might be able to pop off, but they don't really have that deep roster of American fighters that the PBC has. And Golden Boy Promotions, I'd have to look more at Golden Boy Promotions, but shoot, they're just in a tough time because the only real fighter that they have that's a significant fighter is Canelo Alvarez, and he's in Mexico and said with no uncertain terms he ain't even fighting Mexicans. So what you gonna do with him if this gets prolonged? So anyway, I just thought that was very, very interesting, man, how we went really quick from being a very, an international sport to being a very closed national sport because of the restrictions that are being put in place because of, the situation we're in. But you let me know if you think that whether Top Rank is going to be able to pull that off, or whether or not the PBC or people that have the ability to put on American fighters really can separate themselves and keep themselves operational while the other guys suffer. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.